me your strategy in a one quarterback league. And again, remove yourself as a fantasy analyst, just your fantasy player. When do you want to draft a quarterback? And who are some of the just get when you want to draft a quarterback? Start there.
I want to draft a quarterback when it feels like a good value. I know that there are a lot of leagues out there where Josh Allen's going to go in round 1 or round 2. Patrick Mahomes is going to go right behind him. I'm going to let fantasy managers take those players at those values. I'm looking for Josh Allen in round 4 or round 5. I'm looking for Justin Herbert before Patrick Mahomes.
Okay, but we know those guys aren't getting there in most leagues. They're just not.
All right, Tom Brady, round 8, go for it.
But
I mean, like I don't know what you want me to say.
I'm trying to put us, because we don't do this in the realistic fantasy leagues, where Josh Allen goes round 2, and Herbert and Mahomes go in round 3, and Brady goes around 5. Like, are you waiting past that? Because
yes, absolutely, because those are bad values. If you start only one quarterback, it's terrible value.
So are you comfortable with Stafford, Rodgers, Cousins, Carr?
Yeah, if it comes to that.
I just want to make that clear because, again, we're different.
That was a better question than the first one.
We're different. We're going to try and wait out those guys, but in most leagues it does not happen, and that's just the reality of what we see. We sit here and say year after year after year, don't take quarterback in the first 2 rounds. Take Josh Allen in round 4. It just doesn't happen.
No, but I do get Herbert a lot in round 5 in our leagues because I think that's good value.
Right.
So maybe it's a beauty in the eye of the beholder thing.
Right. Keith, give me the options in 2 quarterback superflex leagues. When is the time to draft a quarterback?
You should take any of the top 7 in round 1. I would say that gets you all the way to Kyler Murray or Tom Brady, depending on how you rank it. And then there's a couple of more guys, Russell Wilson, Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, that I would take in round 2. I think you get into the Stafford, Cousins, Lance, Fields, Rodgers, Carr range in round 3, round 4. And then the real key is, especially if you already have one quarterback by that point, there should be a gap. Like, we get past those first 14 or so sure thing high-end QB2 at worst, and then Lance and Fields. And there should be a little bit of gap before the next group of quarterbacks go. There will be 1 or 2 that get taken in that round 5 or 6 range. I usually pass on those guys and wait until we get a little bit later and then maybe take 2 of them. I do think guys like Jared Goff, Davis Mills, Mac Jones get a little bit of boost in this format because they're really unlikely to lose their jobs.
And you could even take the approach of some of the uncertain quarterback situations, taking 2 of them. So Mariota and Ritter, Trubisky and Pickett, you could take 2 of those guys and just hope that one of them becomes a week in, week out starter for you in these formats. But don't forget about taking a 3rd quarterback. In some Superflex leagues, people avoid that, but it is important to take a 3rd guy because you want to continue to start a quarterback in that Superflex spot. Very, very important. All right, so you kind of hinted on this a little bit, Dave, in terms of guys that you're targeting. Brady after the top group goes. You said you're comfortable with some of those guys later, but is there, when you approach your draft, is it Herbert? Is that the one you're looking for?
I mean, unless Josh Allen's there, sure, because I'm looking for that value. And that's what I really come to the conclusion on with Tom Brady is that I believe the Fantasy Pros ADP is that he's the 9th quarterback off the board. And the NFC ADP, those are high-stakes leagues, he's the 11th quarterback off the board. So I see that, and I'm going to take advantage because Tom Brady's been a top 10 fantasy quarterback in points per game each of his 2 years in Tampa, and last year he was 2nd. And I know what the faults are with him, but I'm still willing to take the risk on Tom Brady if he's going to go after Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott, especially Prescott now. I think Brady's absolutely one of those value quarterbacks that you hope that you can get in that round 7-8 range.
Keith, I know for you, Jalen Hurts is someone that you're targeting, but the flip side of this, of the top tier guys, who are you avoiding? And you can take into account cost, because I know Joe Burrow on some sites is going a little bit too soon, but there are quarterbacks that you look at and saying, I just don't want any part of this because of XYZ certain situation.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit more willing than Dave to take a quarterback in round 4, but Josh Allen never makes it that far. So, I don't see a big difference really between Allen, Herbert, Mahomes, and Jackson. I avoid Allen just because he goes so much earlier than the rest of those 3 in most drafts that we see. I'm really fine with taking the last of that group, especially if they're there in round 4. Kyler would be another one, and then Joe Burrow just due to cost. And then I don't have Derek Carr in the same tier as Matthew Stafford and Kirk Cousins, so I do avoid Carr as well.
For me, it's Aaron Rodgers if he's still being drafted as a top 10 quarterback. That's been the case on our CBS Sports ADP. We'll see if that changes based on some of the guys that are going behind him. And the guy that I target, we already talked about. Trey Lance is the one that I'm just going to wait for, and hopefully he does have that blow-up potential. But I do think if you draft Trey Lance, he's the most obvious one that you want to take a 2nd quarterback with. And so that's the thing, a lot of people have that question. Do I need to take a backup quarterback? And the thing I'll tell people all the time is know your league. If you know that there's going to be more than half your league taking backup quarterbacks, it might be in your best interest to also follow suit. You could also see who's available on waivers. But Dave, when you look at this, approach to taking 2 quarterbacks in a 1 quarterback league, how much of a priority do you put on it? And is there certain guys that you feel like in the Trey Lance range that you have to just take a second guy just to cover yourself?
I think you have to do it with Lance. I think you have to do it with Dak Prescott now too. And I think you should consider doing it if you really wait on quarterback and your first one is Rodgers or Cousins or Carr. And maybe it's Rodgers and Cousins and Carr are still there with your next pick and you take both of them. But if I'm taking Josh Allen or Justin Herbert or Patrick Mahomes, any of those sets, even Jalen Hurts, I don't want another quarterback on my team. I'm not going to bench those guys. Like, they're going to have to miss time, and I'd go to my waiver wire, and then my fantasy season could be over at that point. But I want that bench spot to go to somebody else because I'm never going to consider putting somebody in ahead of Allen, Herbert, Mahomes, etc.